Good Wednesday to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to the European Outlook for today, the 24th of July. And I wanted in today's video to look specifically at the type of summer pattern that we've had so far, what's been kind of essentially driving it, and where we are going as we move towards the final month of meteorological summer. But before we continue with the video, if you're enjoying the content here on the channel, if you're relatively new or whatever, please hit that like button. Comment, let me know what you're thinking, and also subscribe if you haven't already done so. It would be greatly appreciated. There is a lot of work going on here at Mark Vogan Weather to look at the big broad picture, understanding how the weather is behaving, what's driving it or potentially driving it, and also looking further down the road. And that is certainly what we're going to look at today. We're going to look specifically at what's happened so far versus what prospects we have for the month of August. Now, this is been sent in to me by our good friend Richard Trott here. This is the 300 millibar zonal wind anomaly for the period between the 1st of June right the way through till the 16th of July. And essentially, this really kind of tells us a story. It not only tells us the mean winds within the 300 millibar level or the jet stream level, but also where the ridges and the troughs have been positioned as well. And the one real standout is this profile of negative over northern Greenland, positive over the North Atlantic, negative underneath here. So this is wind anomalies, remember, so stronger winds blowing across Greenland, especially central and northern Greenland. We've had a lack of wind underneath a mean ridge of high pressure that has essentially been parked over this region for the summer so far. Then we've had stronger winds coming underneath here, and it's quite interesting when you look at this here. We've had quite a trough over the north of Greenland. We've had quite a strong ridge of high pressure over the North Atlantic, and essentially this has been dictated potentially a back and forward feedback mechanism between ocean and atmosphere, but we've had a warm anomaly here over the central North Atlantic that has, I believe, been driving that mean ridge of high pressure over the central North Atlantic. That has in turn been allowing winds to come in from a generally west to northwest direction over the Atlantic, allowing the waters to upwell here to the west of the British Isles and Ireland here. And essentially this has been driving the pattern, I think. I think the dry soils over Eastern Europe has been driving the hot conditions that we've had so far this summer. We are seeing some changes, by the way. It looks as if the heat is going to start to ease over Eastern Europe. And you notice that we're starting to see stronger ridging over Iberia and the northward progress of that intertropical convergence zone here. We're going to likely start to see the tropics waking up as we move into the month of August. We're seeing that in the West Pacific. There will be a separate video talking about Gami, which is a very powerful Category 4 hurricane, or typhoon, should I say, affecting both the Philippines and also Taiwan, and may well affect China later down the road here. But it's all the moving parts and trying to understand these moving parts and how they dictate the atmosphere in other parts of the world. In other words, our part of the world, Pacific, how it responds, North America, North Atlantic, and Europe as well. We may have a typhoon in the West Pacific, thousands of miles away, but that can have a ripple effect in the atmosphere and even have influence in our pattern. So it's quite interesting here when we look at the 7-day temperature change. You can see that we've actually warmed slightly over the tropical and subtropical Atlantic. We've cooled slightly to the west of the UK in a kind of flat zonal situation here from Canada across the UK and Ireland. And the reason why is because we've actually had the high shift just a little bit further south compared to June, and we're seeing an increase in winds between the trough over Greenland, the ridge over the central North Atlantic. That's been allowing these waters to cool slightly. How much does that influence the atmosphere going forward? That's going to be the thing. With regards to the La Nina, we are likely to start to see an increase in easterly trade winds here. That should allow some of that cold water, subsurface water, to then rise to the surface. We're seeing a subtle cooling in the West Pacific. We're also seeing quite neutral conditions over the Indian Ocean here. So we've got neither really a signal for either a positive or a negative Indian Ocean dipole at the moment. We've got slight cooling over the North Pacific also to speak about. So I want to show you a few things here. So obviously, this was the month of June in terms of the 500 millibar pattern. I'm going to kind of skip back and forward slightly, and I do apologize for that here. It wouldn't be a Vogan video without skipping back and forward here, but nonetheless, I'm going to do that anyway. This is the 500 millibar pattern for the month of June, and you can see here, if we blow this right up, hopefully you can see it a little bit clearer. So this is off the website here. You can check this out at your leisure at any point. This was the 500 millibar pattern for the month of June. You can see here the strong ridge of high pressure over the central North Atlantic. There's the negative extending from Canada across Greenland into the UK and Ireland here. Arguably the strongest negative anomaly anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere was seen just to the north of the UK. But generally this is the reason why we've had the cool June and also the cool July, because essentially we've had that positive continue from June into the month of July here, and we've had these general west and northwesterly winds dominating the pattern here, essentially keeping the heat at bay. Now you notice here the month of June we had the lower heights across Iberia here and extending all the way down to the Canary Islands. For the month of July, the first half seen a very, very similar upper air setup, but we're starting to see some subtle changes. And we've seen this a little bit back in the second half of June. This time of the year, it is very, very difficult to maintain a certain type of pattern for the entire summer, where we are going to see subtle changes taking place, and we are seeing that taking place. Natural seasonal adjustment, upper atmosphere sees changes taking place within the tropics. We're seeing the intertropical convergence zone lifting north along with the subtropical ridge of high pressure. We're seeing the ridge now become a bit more prominent over Iberia, and therefore we've seen, like at the end of June, with that ridge of high pressure becoming stronger up over Spain and Portugal, we're seeing everything shift just a little bit further north, allowing warmer temperatures to move into the UK and Ireland here. But what does these adjustments mean? Are they temporary? Are they more permanent? That's going to be the question. This is an interesting one here by Christian off Twitter, showing he's based in Europe, and he's showing this is a 3-part tweet talking about the intertropical convergence zone increasing northwards with the westward shift on Africa and intense heat dome over Spain. So you can see here that we've got the high pressure on Spain. We've got the deep negative here over the North Atlantic and Greenland here. So we've had that little bit of a shift south, a weakening of that mean ridge of high pressure. So during the first half of July, we've seen a fairly strong ridge of high pressure over the central North Atlantic. But minor adjustments, whether it be the MJO, an inactive phase, more widespread sinking over the Atlantic basin, for example, allowing the atmosphere to slightly adjust. And during the middle portions of July, we've seen a weakening of that high over the central North Atlantic, and we've seen more prominent high pressure now developing over southwestern Europe. That's been allowing to exert more warming influence, winds changing from a west to northwesterly direction, driven by that high anchored over the North Atlantic. With that weakening, we've seen the high then build a little bit more over Spain and Portugal, allowing west to southwesterly winds to develop over the UK and Ireland. But the question, like I say, is this: what's causing the change? Likely MJO, natural climatology for the time of the year, adjustments, etc. We have a weakening of the jet stream as well. And there's other factors to take into consideration as well. What's going on within the Pacific, the rise of typhoon activity in the West Pacific, the fact that the West African monsoon is becoming a little bit more prevalent as well. We're going to see the tropics in the Atlantic basin become more active as we move into the month of August. And that really creates a giant question mark over the month of August. What takes place with August? And it's going to be very, very strongly influenced by the tropics within the Atlantic Basin. So this is the period here. This is, again, Christian's tweet, Monday the 29th through Monday the 5th of August. High pressure, prominent over Northern Europe, reflecting a blocking regime and a strongly positive NAO signal here. So we're starting to see higher pressure exert its influence as we depart July and begin the month of August here. You can see here that we have got a somewhat negative anomaly over the UK and Ireland at the moment here. So as we play through this loop here, you can see some of the information here by Christian. As anticipated a few days ago, the westward movement of the anticyclone. So we're actually seeing a weakening of the high over Eastern Europe. So we're going to start to lose some of that intense upper 30s, low 40s, even close to mid 40s in parts of the Balkans, southeastern Europe, where it's been brutal, driven, I think, by drought. Also, the La Nina, etc., having more trophy influence over Western Europe, ridging over the east of Europe here. The sea surface temperatures over the North Atlantic driving the upper pattern here as well. But as anticipated, we're seeing that westward progress of the anticyclone or high pressure. Significant increase in temperatures not only in Spain but also Morocco and Algeria, with temperatures here in northwest Africa approaching 50 Celsius, which is pretty darn brutal, obviously. So looking further on here in the thread, you can see here that Roseby waves over Spain. As the Hofmüller shows us, we see a possible phase 1-2 of the MJO for the month of August here. So we're seeing the eastward progress of that wave of upward motion extending out of the Pacific and into the Atlantic Basin. So we're starting to see the changes, the adjustments being made. Now this is off the multi-model here. So this is the ECM, the Met Office, Meteo France, CMCC, NCEP, JMA for August of 2024. You can see here it's quite a positive NAO signal with a negative up towards Iceland and Greenland here. So you see here, seen by this multi-model run, that we are seeing an extension of the Azores high extending into the UK and Ireland here. That is suggesting that we see more influence of high pressure into the month of August compared to what we've seen in June and July. But we've had flirts with that. End of June, end of July, very, very similar type of situation where we've seen the winds change from west to northwest to more west to southwest. So that's going to be quite interesting to see. And this is the 2 meter temperature anomalies here, slightly warmer than average. Looking at the CFSV2 for the month of August, you can see here, similar to the multi-model run, by the way, negative to the northwest of the UK and Ireland, up towards, say, Iceland. We've got a strong ridge of high pressure extending from the Azores into the southern half of the British Isles. What does this constitute here if we look at Europe specifically? You can see here that this is the 500 millibar look over Europe. So that would suggest cooler, wetter across the north, warmer, drier across the south. Incidentally, this is what the model looks like. Wet across the north, dry across the south for the month of August. Looking at precipitation, 2 meter temperature anomalies, cool in the north, warmer in the south here. So this is some changes now starting to show up as we step out of July and into the month of August here. Looking at the CFSV2 weeklies for the same general period, this is the upcoming 7 days, and I think that's slightly overdone in my opinion. I could be wrong with that, but I think it's showing slightly cooler than what it should be. Now, as I said in the July outlook, during the second half of July, while I thought the trough and more northwesterly flow would dominate the first half over the UK and Ireland, during the second half, I thought we would start to see the ridge of high pressure becoming a little bit more dominant over Spain and Portugal, and that battle between trough near Iceland, ridge near the Azores, near Iberia, the Iberian high would become a little bit more influential during the second half of the month. So I think actually, all in all, the July outlook has turned out pretty darn good, in my opinion. And I'm really quite pleased with the overall concept. Remember, the monthly outlooks are different to the summer outlook. The monthly outlooks obviously being produced nearer the time period, therefore you've got a higher chance of having more accurate outcome. The summer forecast, it will always be a little bit less accurate, especially the further out you go. But generally speaking, I'm fairly happy with the way things are playing out. Give or take a few errors here and there, which is obviously natural. But this is in the week 2 here, so this is the first full week of August here. Cool across the north, warm across the south here. Then moving into the following week, this takes out to the middle portion of the month, 7th through the 14th. Cool across the northwest, warmer across the southeast. So the modelling is really leaning towards the negative towards the north of the UK, the stronger positive to the south of the UK here. Even the following week has a very similar look, 14th through the 21st, looking like this here. So very, very interesting overall solution for the month of August. And this would be a pretty classic month of August for the UK and Western Europe. Hot and dry across Iberia with extensions into France and into the southern half of the UK. Always that bit cooler, more unsettled, windier, nearer low pressure across the northern half of the British Isles here. So only time will tell how this all pans out. But certainly it is interesting seeing the changes taking place with the MJO, with the overall seasonal adjustments, sea surface temperature adjustments, the upper atmosphere changing from large scale sinking to upward motion, etc. It's a complex, what's the right word? It's a complex relationship between ocean and atmosphere, and it's trying to understand the behaviour of this overall. But I think we're looking more likely to see lower pressure developing over the Arctic region, higher pressure within the mid-latitude pattern, and heat becoming the more dominant player. But the big fundamental question is going to be the tropics. How does the tropics behave with the mid-latitude pattern? And that could have significant burn on the type of pattern that we see during the month of August here. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Hope it's not been too long-winded or hard to understand. I hope it's been clear, because that is my goal here on the channel, to try and deliver clear, unbiased, unhyped weather content here that is essentially for everybody. So yeah, like, share and subscribe. Do check out the Tropical Outlook. That was released slightly before this video, obviously, so you can watch that. And I'll be back again, all being well, tomorrow. I'm going to try and do an in-depth look at the latest on La Nina, based on the NOAA's information, what's happened versus the prediction going forward. I'm going to try and do that in tomorrow's video, so stay tuned for that as well. Bye for now.